Hello everyone, my name is Flynn Shifo, and welcome back to episode 2 of the Hero Build series. Today's episode is going to be split into two parts. Our first portion is going to cover a PvP Laias, and our second portion is going to cover a PvP and PvE Lucius. So I hope you guys are strapped in because we're ready to go. As most of you guys already know, Laias is an incredibly special hero to me. And I want to give a quick disclaimer that a PvP Laias is definitely not the easiest of projects. However, I will definitely guarantee that if you decide to build a PvP Laias and you go the length with her, she will definitely pay off. To put things into a better perspective, under normal circumstances, Laias does not have a cleanse nor dispel. However, she does have very good heals, she definitely has a nice shield, she gives out a lot of mana, she gives out a lot of magic defense, she gives out a bit of magic block, and she definitely gives out a bit of magic crit resistance. With all those bases covered, let's go ahead and get started. As you can see right in front of you, I definitely put Laias into a protection set. You want her taking the least amount of damage possible because 1, she's definitely your priest, and 2, she is definitely going to be your lifeline when you need it most. With all that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the build in depth. As you can already see, I have no crit on Laias. This is because she can heal perfectly fine on a straight attack build. Our second option is accuracy. As you can tell, I have 1 line of accuracy on Laias' gear. This helps counter anybody who may jump to the back, including Saria, Tanya, and other divers. Our third option is physical block. This will help reduce the amount of damage she takes from physical damage, as well as any physical heroes that come her way. This complements the magic block that priests get innately. After we have our block stats, we have physical block defense and magic block defense. Priests innately get magic block defense, so you want to reduce the physical amount of damage that your priest may take. A line to no more than 2 lines of physical block defense is what you want to aim for. With our block stats covered, let's go ahead and talk about physical and magical toughness. Priests innately receive 150 magical toughness. If you plan to use Laias in League of Victory, I would highly recommend that you add at least 30% of physical toughness to help counter all the physical damage that comes her way. Likewise, an additional 5% or 50 magical toughness to help bring her magic toughness stat to a solid 20%. After we cover our toughness stats, let's go ahead and take a look at CC resist. Because Laias lacks a cleanse, it is a good idea to build a fully CC resistant Laias. For that, let's go ahead and aim around 50% CC resist, because we're going to go ahead and we're going to complement it with one of her T perks to get her all the way up. And finally, after CC resist, we're going to take a look at standard attack speed, a decent amount of MP attack, and then we're going to look at more defensive stats in the form of P crit resist and M crit resist. As you can already tell, Laias is already soft cap on P crit resist, and she's running a very low amount of M crit resist. The reason why M crit resist is so low is because she gives out M crit resist herself, as well as the T1 perk for crit resist. This helps soft cap her and make sure that she's well rounded off. With that, let's go ahead and talk about UTs. Laias can actually take quite a few different UTs into battle. When it comes to PvP, I prefer her UT 4, which is the tier of the God Dragon. This boosts the defense on the skill 4, as well as recover all allies' mana by a certain amount. The mana given to the allies increases as you awaken the UT further. A second UT that you can take into PvP would be her UT3. This one allows Whirlpool to target 1 additional enemy and give out an additional mana depending on your Star Awakening. Her other UTs are fairly half decent in PvP as well. Her UT1 will increase her heal rate on skill 1, as well as give magic block. And her UT 2 reduces the cooldown of the actual bubble, and it dispels negative effects on who it lands on. There are plenty of artifacts that Laias can utilize. My personal favorite has been the Tarot Card of Loss. Since I'm going with a no crit build, I don't really take a hit on having her crit chance reduced further, and it increases her attack directly. I do want you guys to know that a PvP Laias does require a 5-star UW. This is because it increases the heal rate of all allies by 20%, as well as 5% of Laias' own attack when it comes to magic defense. And on top of that, it heals the lowest ally by 250% of her own attack every 5 seconds. With all those bases covered, let's go ahead and talk about Transcendence perks. When it comes to T1 perks, it is highly recommended that you always take HP, because HP scales incredibly well with PvP. And a second good perk is the Crit Resist Up. This increases both magic and physical crit resistance by 250. If you do not need this perk because you got the perfect line items, then taking the Attack Up perk is definitely recommended. When it comes to PvP Laias, you can never go wrong with Goddess's Blessing, which increases the crit chance of all the allies by 150. You always want to take Inner Peace because it constantly heals all your allies by 1%, as well as giving them a 75 or 7.5% CC resist. And if you decide to TP her, I would recommend taking Swiftness, which increases the attack speed of all allies by 150. For T3's T4 perks, I only recommend taking the increases Sulfur CC resist by 400. If you remember, our stat sheet had 52%. I recommended getting at least 500. You add the additional 400 from here, that gets her to 90%. And then there's an additional 75 right here. You're literally very close to your perfect 1000. And then finally, you always under any circumstances, always want to take her Elias Dark, which recovers 350 mana of all allies every 3 seconds. That about sums it up for PvP Laias. I do want to make a disclaimer that if you decide to go all in and you invest in Laias, especially if it's a PvP build, you can definitely also take her into any PvE content and she will do just as well. However, for starting off, I would just strictly recommend going with a lighter build so you don't have to go all in on Laias like I did. Normally, I would provide a montage or video of how that hero performs. However, considering Elias is a regular on my team, I would just simply recommend checking out some of my archives to take a look at and see how Elias performs in PvP. Although I don't think I have any PvE content, I can promise you she does perfectly well in this build in PvE. With all that said, let's go ahead and flip the page to Lucius. Lucius himself is quite the hero. He can counter a lot of different divers in PvP, as well as provide plenty of support in PvE. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of his intricacies. Lucius is versatile enough to be able to use one gear set in both areas and just strictly rely on his Transcendence perk shifting as needed to provide the support he needs in either PvP or PvE. As you can see right before you, Lucius has quite the stat block. He has 880 crit with his own 2 perk. He should be right around the 100%. He has a line of accuracy, and he has P-block, M-block, P-block defense, his innate M-block defense, and obviously his magic and physical toughnesses. Scrolling further down the stat block, he has a single enchant of recovery, he has some debuff accuracy, he has a half decent amount of attack speed, and obviously physical and magical crit resistance. Starting with crit, you want some crit on Lucius because his heals can crit and he can do a good amount of DPS. With those 2 factors in mind, having crit on Lucius enables him to go further in whatever content you decide to take him in. I recommend only taking accuracy and debuff accuracy if you plan to utilize Lucius in PvP. This is because he helps counter divers and any heroes that may have a bit of dodge on them. He is a mid-range hero, and thus when he uses his S2, any divers are usually engulfed in it, thus dispelling them of their buffs, debuffs, and cleansing your team. To ensure Lucius's continued survivability, I would highly recommend that you soft-cap his physical block. This will help complement his innate magical block and his magic block defense. As with Laias, if you do not plan on using Lucius in League of Victory, I would not recommend placing physical toughness. However, if you do plan to make him your PvP priest, I would highly recommend you add a good amount of physical and magical toughness in hopes that he continues to survive. As you could probably already see, Lucius does not have MP attack at all. This is because I opted for an MP per sec build. I would highly recommend that you get yourself at least 5 lines of MP per sec and you take the Blessing of Mana Transcendence perk, which we will review shortly. Lucius's unique weapon is quite helpful in PvE. However, because it is time-based and dispellable, it makes it quite useless in PvP. With those aspects in mind, I would only recommend using his unique weapon in PvP if you have it, otherwise Class UW does just as fine. When it comes to unique treasure, I would only recommend using one, and that is his unique treasure 3, Guidance of the Morning Star. This makes the effects of Stigmata, his S3, undispellable, and it reduces the cooldown by a certain percentage. Let's review his Transcendence perks. For PvP, I have 2 aspects set up for Lucius. 1 as main heals, and 2 if he's supporting. For main heals, we're going to go ahead and take his T1 attack up, and we're going to take his crit resist up. This would help complement his crit resist blocks and bring him to self-cap. For Transcendence 2 perks, we're obviously going to go ahead and take the crit perk that will give all allies crit. We need to take his Blessing of Mana so that he gets faster mana recovery to complement his MP sec build, and we're going to go ahead and take Swiftness, which increases the attack speed of all allies by 150. When it comes to Transcendence 3 and 4 perks, we're going to go ahead and take Zone of Faith Dark, which continuously dispels positive effects from enemies within range, and a very important one to note is his Stigmata Dark, which gives him CC immunity for the duration of the skill. That is right. If you use his skill 3 while utilizing UT3, Lucius is CC immune for the duration of the entire S3, and it cannot be dispelled. For his support perks on PvP, we're still going to go ahead and take his attack up, and we're going to still take the crit resist up. If you do not need either or of these perks, I would always highly recommend taking HP up. We are still going to go ahead and take the Blessing of Mana to complement his MP per sec. We are still going to take his Zone of Faith Dark, and we are still going to take his Stigmata Dark. I added taking in his S4 Dark so that he no longer consumes HP when he uses his skills. And finally, we take his Lucius Light, which gives him, I'll be honest, his basic stats: attack, defense, and HP. For his PvE aspect, very minimal changes. We're still going to take the attack up perk, and we're going to take monster hunting if it applies. And I do say if it applies because obviously if your target or whatever you're running in PvE is hero, you will not utilize monster hunting. We will still go ahead and take his support perks, which these can be shuffled if you take another priest that runs these perks, but they're pretty standard: Goddess's Blessing, Blessing of Mana, and Swiftness. And we're always going to take his continuous dispel positive effects on his Zone of Faith Dark, and we're taking his immunity to CC perk on Stigmata. Most priests can do incredibly well with various artifacts. Lucius himself will do pretty amazing with Pocket Watch of an Ancient Civilization. The reason for this is because he has incredibly long cooldowns, and you can minimize the downtime on a skill 3 if you go ahead and you take the Pocket Watch. I hope you guys found today's episode informative and helpful. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below, and I will definitely try to address them as the weeks pass by. With all that said, I will see you guys next week with a revamped Nyla video. Hope to see you guys around, and see you guys in stream.